Whenever.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Evan Kukas, and I'm actually on the side against drilling or opening up drilling into the Arctic Wildlife National Refuge. I'm on Kevin's side, obviously. First off, I would actually like to point out that President Bush was our former president, and President Obama has actually recently said, "I strongly reject drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge because it would irreversibly damage a protected national wildlife refuge without creating sufficient oil supplies to meaningfully affect the global market price or have a discernible impact on U.S. energy security." Also, recently, Senate has already rejected a proposal for Anwr, to drill in Anwr, with only one opponent in the Senate. To start off, I have three main claims that I'll be talking about. The first one would be explaining why it is not necessary to drill in Anwr. The second would be that we won't accomplish any sufficient goals, such as time constraints. And the third would be that there isn't any positive advantages enough to go along with this drilling in Anwr. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, they state that there is actually little known about the size and amount of oil productivity in Anwr. I have a quote here that says, "There is little direct knowledge regarding the petroleum geology of the Anwr region. The USGS oil resource estimates are based largely on the oil productivity of geological formations that exist in the neighboring state lands and which continue into Anwr. Consequently, there is considerable uncertainty regarding both the size and quality of the oil resources that exist in Anwr. Thus, the potential ultimate oil recovery and potential yearly production are highly uncertain." So, drilling into Anwr with no proof that there's actually going to be however much oil that the affirmative side proposes, it's not worth the risk in the end. And I'm going to be explaining that furthermore. The U.S. Energy Department also shows that it is still insufficient to drill in Anwr due to opening an Alaska Wildlife Refuge to oil development would only slightly reduce America's dependence on imports and would lower oil prices by less than 50 cents a barrel, according to the analysis released by the Energy Department previously Tuesday. This research was in 2004, so not the last Tuesday. Also, the price of gas per gallon would not lower enough to permit drilling. A 2004 study by the government's Energy Information Administration, the EIA, found that drilling in Anwr would trim the price of gas by just 3.5 cents a gallon by 2027. If oil prices continue to skyrocket, the savings would be greater, but not by much. Also, the amount of oil barrels produced would also be insignificant. James Kendall, one of the authors of this study, said the refuge would add to domestic production, but when you're talking of a world oil market of over 75 million barrels a day, adding just 900,000 barrels by 2025 is just a drop in the bucket to the world market. Also, global oil demand will increase to where the new incoming oil will not even be sufficient to cover all of the global needs. The U.S. has an estimated 3% of global petroleum reserves, but consumes 24% of the world's oil. Offshore territories and public lands like Anwr that don't allow drilling may contain up to 75 billion barrels of oil, according to the EIA. That may sound like a lot, but it's not enough to make a significant difference in a world where global oil demand is expected to rise 30% by 2030 to nearly 120 million barrels a day. The amount of oil the U.S. has currently is not enough to justify drilling in Anwr. This is a small point I'm going to touch on. The U.S. only has 3% of the world's oil reserves, and less than 1/5 of this is in federal offshore waters. So even if we were able to tap into the full 3% the U.S. has, it would scarcely make a difference in the demand-supply balance in the world market. These quotes explain why it's not necessary and it would be insufficient to go drill into Anwr due to the world market and the market today in the U.S. No matter how much oil is produced, we are limited to how much can be transferred at one time. This goes along with how sufficient it would be to even transport the oil, say we were to drill into Anwr. Even if 7.7 billion barrels a day could be recovered, the current upper limit to Anwr oil production is the transportation capacity of something called TAPS, which is the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System, which only carries 2 million barrels per day, to be exact, 2.136. 2 million compared to 7.7 billion that is proposed that we would receive isn't even close to being able to transport it in one single day. My opponents actually touched on that Anwr drilling would actually create hundreds of thousands of jobs, but Alaska only has so many people. With the between 250,000 and their estimated 700,000 jobs are estimated to be created by development of the coastal plain. Alaskan unemployment rate is only 7.3% and only has 60,000 workers unemployed in the state. Alaska's unemployment has also been on a steady decline this past year, starting at 9.7%, so they're already gaining more jobs and there's going to be even less people. What this means is that there's going to have to be more people transported into Alaska, which means housing development and just even more people and more time and more money put into the effort of drilling into Anwr. Also on foreign dependency, the drilling wouldn't help our dependence on foreign imports. Oil from the refuge would hardly make a dent in our dependence on foreign imports, leaving our economy and way of life just as exposed to wild swings in worldwide oil prices and supply as it is today. And this is from the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, an article in the National Resources Defense Council. And this was in the year 2010. To end this, I would like to restate that I am against drilling in Anwr due to the reasons that it's insufficient, it's not necessary, and there would be not enough advantages to permit drilling.